All right, welcome back to the Historical Blunders podcast, where hopefully you can learn something and have a damn good time doing it. I'm your host, Nate.
And I'm Jacob, and today we're going to talk about the Chernobyl disaster, which released more than 400 times the radiation of the Hiroshima bombings. And we have a special guest today, someone who has actually been to Chernobyl recently. So with that, let's roll. So in getting ready to talk about the Chernobyl disaster, it occurred to me that my sister Sarah had actually been to Chernobyl recently. So
Not too recently.
There's
some shit going on.
Pre-Ukraine war. But we recorded an interview with her to talk about her experiences, and we'll play that now. All right. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for joining us on this wonderful Historical Blunders Day. And tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're my sister, Sarah, right?
Yep, I am your sister.
Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. And yeah, we were gonna do an episode on Chernobyl, and actually Sam, my wife, was like, "Hey, you should have your sister do it, be on the show too." And I was like, "You know what? You're right." So here we are. And what were you doing in Chernobyl?
So I'd actually been to Ukraine a couple times, the summer of 2016 and the summer of 2019. And I went around and did some like music camps for kids with an organization. And we went to a suburb of Kyiv called Irpin, and then we actually kind of went out into some villages and more rural areas. And one was about 40 miles or so outside of Chernobyl. So I had always kind of discussed the history of that and the effects it's had on the communities around the area that we were working with. And we talked about if we wanted to go on the tour or not, like to learn more or experience a little bit. But when we decided to go, it was actually before the HBO series came out. It was crazy, like, to see how popular that kind of became after, we had already been going there. So, but yeah, we kind of wanted to go and get some more context for the area and the people that we were working with.
Were you worried about the radiation part, or what did they do to kind of mitigate that?
At first, I guess I maybe was a little bit worried, but we had these little monitors that we wore, and it was pretty much, they said it was less than like going on like a transatlantic flight. So, or like much, much less than like getting like a chest x-ray or something like that. So, I mean, if you lived there and stayed there for a long period of time, I think it would definitely have some effects on your health. But we were just there for maybe 6 hours or so. But they did monitor, like we had these little necklaces on, and we'd go through, almost looked like metal detectors, like at the airport, and they would check it. So I wasn't ever really too concerned about it. But when I tell people I went, they're usually a little shocked.
They're scared to be around you.
No. I don't know. I have been told before that I'm glowing, so.
Oh my God. So you went to Pripyat, and I bet that was interesting. Just big ghost town, right?
Yeah. It was very interesting. We went to kind of some of the main, like if you look up pictures of the area. So we went to like an abandoned daycare kind of like, and then a grocery store. And I guess the main thing was that like, it was like a carnival that was set up. There was going to be some kind of event, and it never happened. But all of like there's a Ferris wheel still set up and like a kind of a merry-go-round kind of thing. And
No,
I
it's
actually,
just super creepy.
yeah, I showed you that really creepy video of like, it's just kind of like, oh, it's all old and rusted and it's kind of just moving in the wind really slowly.
Oh
So,
yeah,
yeah.
we're gonna post that on Facebook probably because yeah, it's
Yeah, I was
creepy.
gonna say you should share that because I was I was proud of that video. I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
creepy. But yeah, and it was just interesting to see how quickly like nature takes over. They really didn't adjust anything for the tours. Like there's no like paved pathways or anything like that. They didn't really clean anything up. It's just like I really appreciated that because it's like you just see it for as how it is right now. And I really think it won't be very long until there's not much left there.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a very authentic. I wonder if it's still that way after the series came out or not. But
I don't know. That's a
uh,
good question. I
yeah,
wonder what it looks like today, anyways, with the conflict and everything.
obviously, yeah,
So,
that too. So, what was like some of the stuff that you saw that was like, what were you surprised about? I guess. So I'm guessing there's got to be at least something that took you by surprise.
yeah, I was really surprised by how close they let us get to the reactor, like the sarcophagus. We were like right across the street from it. So that was I was not expecting that.
I'd be a little
They're
surprised.
like, there it is. I'm like, oh, it's right
So they
there.
didn't tell you beforehand, like, yeah, we're gonna go up,
You know,
pretty
they
much
probably
see the
did.
reactor.
They probably did.
You
It
just
might have
didn't pay
it
attention.
it might have been in Ukrainian though, so I don't know.
Sure.
So,
The Ukraine.
oh, stop.
Our dad says the Ukraine instead of Ukraine, or
Who does?
at
Well,
least he has before.
a lot of people say the Ukraine when
Is that right?
yeah. So,
The Ukraine.
the Ukraine.
Sounds.
That's dad's thing. Is the
So the tour
Ukraine.
was 6 hours long. It was like an all day type thing.
It was
no?
it was an all day thing. We got picked up a little outside of Kiev, and it was a bus that took us over.
So you had that counter on you. When did it go off the most, or could you tell? Like, oh, we're in the highest radiation of the day, or something.
The necklace didn't really do anything like that, but we did have these little meters. I didn't have one, but quite a few people did, and if it got too high, it would beep. So there was one point where we were on the bus driving past the red forest, and all of a sudden, like everybody's meters just started going off. So that was kind of creepy, but that's supposed to be one of the most affected areas is that forest.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
It,
so
it must it must have been downwind from the reactor or something.
yeah, it was a little freaky. I was like, what's happening? I didn't get to see like what the numbers were. I know that they had some hot spots that they kind of marked for you to like measure it at. Like one of the little cars at the carnival, like they had an X on it, and if you put your meter up to it, it would get really high because that's where like water had settled kind of and like rusted. So I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I think at one point it said like 54, but I know they've gotten much higher numbers too.
I'm curious, the people that you on your mission trip that you were working with, did they talk about like Chernobyl at all, or did it even come up, or is it just like an afterthought at this point?
People do, yeah, they've mentioned it a couple times. One time, it was interesting. I mean, we had a couple of kids come to a camp in that area, and they had some like deformities on their arms, and they were very convinced that it was because of Chernobyl. And so
Jeez.
I think there's a lot of I think people are still afraid of it and the effects that it's had, and it's a lot of unknowns. But my favorite thing was one time we were at one of the locals' houses, and he had this big, beautiful garden. Like Ukrainians love to garden, and they had this big garden, and he was growing cucumbers, and he pulled one out, and it was huge, and he just goes, Chernobyl. Just, oh my gosh,
For better or worse.
really, really funny. Yeah, I mean they've definitely talked about it some.
So you saw what was that statue again too? I remember you talking about that. Tell me about that.
The angel with the horn.
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
the name of that?
I feel like it's the angel of death, but I'm not entirely sure.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's why I'm like, maybe it's not that. But it's definitely like the creepiest picture that I've ever seen.
That'd be a weird thing to erect, right? I'm gonna set up this. We're gonna put this statue in the city. We're gonna call it the Angel of Death. Like, well,
I think it was.
very happy.
I'm pretty sure it was there like originally. So I don't know if it used to look happier or something, but I don't know. It's very eerie now, kind of to see it. And there's a memorial kind of built around it. They have these signs like along a walking path that you walk past, and it has the names of different villages and stuff that were affected. And then as you walk back on the other side, it has like red X's through it, like they've been evacuated, which was I thought it was very powerful.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a pretty dark thing to see.
Yeah.
In general. Probably very eerie, very otherworldly, kind of, with everything being overgrown.
For sure,
and all
yeah.
that, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal.
Yeah. Is there anything else significant about that day that stuck out?
Oh, one thing is that actually there's a restaurant in Chernobyl. Did you know that there's a restaurant there?
I did not.
It's a restaurant there.
Like,
so when
it's
we
like
first
still active one?
Yeah. So when we first got there, they brought us to a restaurant.
Table, locally sourced food.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, they're like, okay, now have a seat and have a meal at our restaurant. And I was like, wait. Oh. Yeah, I was actually really mad because when we first got there, we rode the bus, and then like there was this area outside of it, and it was kind of creepy because there were these like, it wasn't creepy, it was just odd. There were these like little touristy vendors. Do you know what I'm talking about when you go somewhere like?
Oh, sure.
When I went to like Venice in Italy, and it's like beautiful, and then there's these random like carts with people selling like very cliche like I Heart Italy shirts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was some of that
stuff
there, and it was very like distasteful. So I don't know if it was actually part of the tours or if there were just people there selling things that weren't like lots of jokes that weren't really funny. I don't know. It was really strange. I don't know anyone that would like buy a t-shirt from their Chernobyl tour, but anyway, we were there.
I heart Chernobyl.
It was so weird.
Yeah,
and,
I agree. It's kind of weird.
And there were these like porta potties there, and they're like, someone was, I mean, in Ukraine, like if you see a bathroom, like that's your chance because they're not always there. And so like,
wait, the bathrooms aren't always there?
They don't have them like everywhere, you know, like in the U.S. And sometimes they're just like holes in the like holes in the floor, and you're like, so I'm like, okay. And I went into this. It was the most disgusting porta potty I've ever seen in my entire life. Like I'm still scarred by it. We all talked about it. We just looked at each other. We're like, we're not going to talk about this ever again. So, and then we got to this restaurant, and there was like these nice bathrooms, and I was really upset about it. I was like,
should have waited.
So went through all of that for nothing. So Anyway, but yeah, there was a restaurant. And I always forget about that. The meal I had at Chernobyl. So,
Probably a little nerve wracking.
yeah, yeah.
Locally sourced, farm to table.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, so that's anything else you want to bring up about the? I mean, obviously the incident or some of the ramifications of it in general.
Yeah, I mean, it really was kind of, it wasn't the total fall of the Soviet Union, but it definitely was a big part of, Ukraine declaring its independence. Russia and Ukraine have quite a history. They still do today, but there were actually, quite a few like really, really dark events, or even I think they were even darker than Chernobyl. There was one thing where there was this forget what it's called, but it was like the Russians were rationing food. And Ukraine is always kind of a sought after land because of its like got really nice soil for farming. So it's always kind of, that's like the interest of it that other countries are always looking at. So they would have all this grain, and then at some point the Russians just decided to raise like what they would take as their part of it, and they took so much of it that it just starved like millions of people, and just millions of people starved to death. It was a Soviet policy. It was horrific. And then in World War II, actually, I never thought Ukraine really, I guess I never really thought of Ukraine when I thought of World War II. But for that section of the country, it was a kind of a central ground. So a lot of battles were fought right there. And then, they wouldn't be supplied with actual, like, enough weapons or anything. And so, like, something like 5 to 7 million people, Ukrainians, died in World War II. And now, of course, there's the conflict with Russia. There's explosions everywhere, and Kyiv, was just attacked in the middle of the night, and everything was pretty much destroyed. And
Yeah, they've obviously not had an easy go of it.
yeah,
right,
Ukraine has a very sad history, but
yeah,
they're very, very proud people, and they're very hardworking, and they're very creative people, and they're very, very proud of their country. It's something I always appreciate. So,
yeah. I mean, we'll talk about it later in the episode, kind of, but the sense of duty that they have really is like almost unmatched. I mean, between the firemen that came to the scene, between the guys who had to go down and empty the pumps after they knew like it was extremely dangerous. Even the guys, the engineers in the control room that went up to the roof to look at the open nuclear reactor, like even more than that, like the miners too, like all the people, they didn't necessarily like fight against doing all those things because they saw the duty and the need for it.
absolutely. Yes, that's...
So yeah, I agree. I think the people are really a gem, very resilient group.
Yeah.
And it's just disappointing that like their government, lets them down time and time again.
Yeah.
I mean, not the Ukraine, I guess, but the
Yes,
Soviet
right.
Union obviously took advantage of them for sure.
Absolutely. So, but yeah, I mean, it was really important to me to go see all of that, just because we had been working in the area. But I don't think I would ever go back again. I think once is
Why do you say that?
plenty. I don't know.
It's too dark or something?
It's not that. It's just almost makes me like slightly uncomfortable with it being a touristy sort of attraction.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the
I shouldn't
source
be enjoying
of
this. This is
yeah. Well,
yeah.
because you know that there's a lot of, dark tourism that people like to experience. And, you'd like to think everyone's going to kind of understand a culture, but, that, and I don't ever want to eat at that restaurant again. So.
All right. Well, thanks so much for doing this. And obviously we're all proud of you for all the mission work you've done over there.
Oh, thank you.
So thanks. And I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Big thanks to Sarah for doing that interview with us. It's definitely interesting to hear about like the real world ramifications of something that happened. Is it 40 years ago?
Almost,
years
yeah.
ago?
I mean, it was 1986, so it's 2023, so 37 years ago.
Yeah.
Math.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big deal.
Just a little bit.
Big old mess. Good old Soviet Union doing what the Soviet Union does.
Yeah.
It's like a big example of a giant mistake.
Yeah.
There's a joke in there somewhere. But, so what we're going to do now, we'll go through how does a nuclear reactor work?
So a little less history and a little more science.
Yeah.
But with Fly's engineeringness, he really wants to.
Yeah, Jake's a dork.
It's all right.
Jake's a nerd, and he wants to go through this. It's the only thing I can do. It's the only thing I can provide.
I mean, doing our research for the episode, like, I really enjoyed seeing all the demonstrations of how nuclear reactors work and stuff, because I didn't really know much about it. Like, I honestly thought it was them splitting atoms and then power.
Yeah, it's nothing is too hard to understand in a simple way.
Yeah.
But it's the details that get tricky.
Yeah.
But, like, when you hear about stuff high level, it's always kind of cool to me. But, so we'll go through how does a nuclear reactor work, and then we'll go through what exactly happened at Chernobyl that caused such a big old mess. Right. So to start, how does a nuclear reactor work? Right?
How does it? I want to know.
All right, don't...
Teach me.
Shut up, you fat fuck!
So rude.
No, so a good way to think about how a nuclear reactor works is how does like a coal-fired plant work, coal power plant. And the way that works is you have a coal furnace, pretty simple, gets super hot, right? What you do is you take water, you pass that water through the coal-fired furnace and it gets superheated. Then you take that water to another place in the plant.
But Jake, wouldn't it put the fire out?
Oh my God, Nate. No. So that water gets superheated, travels through pipes to another part of the plant where they have what's called a turbine. And a turbine is basically just a huge fan where if you spray this superheated water, it becomes steam in that state. And then that steam turns the fan, and that turning goes to a generator called torque, and then that generator creates electricity.
Just remember, steam is very powerful.
Yeah, it's actually...
Steam can power a locomotive.
Actually, steam, it's kind of like a really advanced steam engine, actually, these power plants. So, either way, right, so that water goes through the turbine, cools down, it becomes more back into a water state, and they release it back to where they got it from, which is usually like a river or a lake, and then and that's what they draw from too, right, for fresh water. So a nuclear plant does the same thing, except for a coal-fired furnace. You have a nuclear reactor, and a nuclear reactor works with 4 different materials, one being the water. And the water, like in the other system, is really like an energy sponge, right? It travels through the reactor, takes up that energy, sucks it up, keeps the reactor from overheating, and they take it to somewhere else, and they extract the energy from it, and that's how you get electricity. The next material would be, obviously, the uranium. And for Chernobyl, they used U-253, I think, or U-235.
I think it was 235.
I'm feeling dyslexic.
It was the stuff that they used for the nuclear bombs at the time.
So what uranium-235 does is 2 main things, right? One is that it's an unstable element, and that means it's constantly firing off neutrons from its nucleus, which really is like, you think about it, it's like millions of little tiny bullets from a gun going off from this material at all times, right? And the other thing that uranium does is that when it gets hit with those neutrons at the right speed, at the right time, the right location, it will split that atom. And that reaction specifically is called fission. And fission creates a fuckload of energy. And that's why nuclear power plants are worth the major investment that they are, because it's really the best amount of energy you can get per buck, basically, out of that.
So uranium-235 is 0.72% of natural uranium. That's it.
That's not very much.
It's not.
Is it synthesized? I don't even know.
That's a lot of...
Come on, Nate, look it up. Anyways, so
I'll find it.
That's uranium, right? The key thing is that it's shooting off neutrons and it breaks and has a fission reaction that creates a ton of energy. So, how do you control that reaction? Because the hard thing with nuclear physics is that it's less a reliable chemical reaction, like gas in a stove, right? You could put so much gas in a volume, heat it up, and you know what you're going to get out of it. With a nuclear reaction, you're relying on the statistical probability that that neutron is going to hit the nucleus at the right speed at the right time. So it's a fairly inconsistent reaction. So you have to be prepared for more or less in any given stance, and that's the challenge we'll talk about later on too. With nuclear physics, is it's very much a statistical probability less than a reliable reaction.
And uranium-235 is naturally occurring.
Ah, look at you.
Yeah, how about that?
Contributing.
Science.
God, we're so smart.
Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in a world who is going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com.
That's right, Nate. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. Yeah, I'm really glad we chose BetterHelp as a sponsor for this podcast because I've had people in my own life that have struggled with mental health and anxiety and depression. And therapy was something that definitely helped them overcome those struggles. And now they're in a much better place.
Yeah, I mean, I use BetterHelp, and so far, so good.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really talking about you.
Oh.
BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days.
And sometimes faster. It only took a couple hours for me.
That's right. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in our description. It's betterhelp.com/historicalblunderspod.
All one word.
That's right. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and get the support that you need.
And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost, without stressing about insurance, who's in network, or anything like that.
So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/historicalblunderspod.
And that's betterhelphelp.com.
So the thing is, how do you control that when it's a fairly inconsistent reaction? There's two materials you use. One is graphite, and graphite acts as largely a neutron-like mirror, right? It's if you encase a uranium material in graphite, those neutrons are going to be firing and bouncing off, greatly increasing your ability to hit the uranium nucleus, right? So that's what graphite does. It really speeds up the process. You can think about it like that, right? The other material they use is boron. And boron is a metal that sucks up the nucleus, or the neutron, sorry. And what that does is slow down the process. Basically, any neutrons that hit it, they stick to it, And that's what they use as a, oh shit, it's running too hot, put some boron in there and it cools it down. So it inhibits the reaction. So the control rods that they have in Chernobyl are composed of boron. However, the ends is talked about a lot, but the ends are graphite.
Was it like 2 feet of them?
Yeah, it was like it was I think it was 1.25 meters or something like that. But the reason that they did that was for cost, like they said in the HBO series. But it had to do with a couple different things. When they ran at really low power, it helped them to better control the process if they wanted to have the reactor running at like really low power outputs. It also allowed them to use the nuclear reactor as a plutonium generator. So it also gave the reactor a second purpose. They didn't have to build another system just for that. So it was for cost, is a simple way to put it. But those are some examples as to why the cost was lower. So what the hell happened, right? That's how a nuclear reactor works. To go through what happened in Chernobyl, you have to understand, like, that's a simple way to put the power plant system. But the really hard parts with those things are you have to have a fault tree of, if something breaks, if something goes wrong, how do you keep this thing stable and safe, right? Because you think about it, you have uranium. You have this material in graphite, which is what the nuclear core was made of. And if you don't have any means of stopping it, or you can't cool it off enough, that material is going to keep going and going and going and getting hotter and hotter and hotter, which we'll see. But you have to have systems in place to account for every situation. So they had to have this safety test. And this was a very unsafe safety test.
Yeah, I kind of love that safety test.
So it's kind of ironic, right?
Yeah.
But the safety test was, if they lost power from the electric grid and they no longer had energy going to the pumps, right? They wanted to be able to rely on the turbine's inertial movement when the reactor's on to still circulate water through the system and have that run the pumps, basically, right? So that's what this test was, and this test was years late. They had ran it a couple times and failed it, and there was very dangerous signs for this test. So
yeah.
They knew.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, they knew it was bad.
Yeah. According to a documentary, the KGB, reliable information. The KGB actually knew...
Viva asks the questions!
Like I said, calm down, Dwight. But the KGB was the Soviets, like, intelligence, special forces. Like, they were crazy. But they actually, like, looked up their records that they had and basically said that Chernobyl was a ticking time bomb. Like, eventually it was gonna blow up.
Yeah, there's design flaws in the reactor, for sure. But this test specifically, so the way that you're supposed to run the test is you're supposed to have the reactor off for a day, and then you go and do the test with a fresh reactor, basically. Now, the problem was that whole day they ran it at 50% roughly. And they did that because another power plant on the grid went out, so they had to supplant energy, basically. And then the night crew came in. And the night crew wasn't really as good or well-versed on what the test was and the dangers of the test specifically. So that's kind of where it started to go bad. So the way the test works, excuse me, you have the nuclear reactor on, and then you cut off the power to the pumps. So the problem was, because they ran it at 50% all day and then they shut it off, they were trying to get it back running, and they couldn't get it running because there's something called xenon gas that builds up when you don't run a reactor at full power. And usually it gets burnt off if you're running it with enough power, but they didn't that day, right? So they were trying to get it started back up. They couldn't get it started. So what they did, and one of the big mistakes they made, was they pulled all the control rods out. So in the Chernobyl nuclear reactor 4 that blew, you have 211 control rods. And you're never supposed to have less than 28 in there. And they had far less than that. I think they only had 18 or 19 in. So it's like, because they were trying to get the power back up, because you can't run the test on no power. You have to have some power in there to run the test. And basically what it was doing was they pulled all the control rods out to try and get the thing cooking, but it still was dead because of the xenon, right? So it's kind of like flooring your gas pedal and then having your handbrake on. Like, you're not getting any power yet, but baby, it's coming, you know? Like, it's not a safe thing to do. You're going to run through your garage door.
Nah, it's okay.
So, eventually, they got to like 6% power. It was coming up some, but it really wasn't enough, which is crazy to think about how they all of a sudden went to this crazy situation. But so they had all the control rods out, and they got the power back up to like 6%. And then they did the test. And the test is, right, you lose power to the pumps. Now, the water wasn't circulating, at least for a shorter period of time, as fast as it should be, which is the safety test, right?
Yeah.
So, that's when it started to go bad. Because then, after only a few minutes, the power shot up. And it shot up to 100%. And then it started going farther than what the reactor should be doing.
I don't think it's supposed to do that.
No. So, it was, at one point, it skyrocketed so far where it could have powered the entire Soviet grid at that point. So it was way off the charts. I think it was 10 times.
So efficient.
Yeah. It was 10 times the power output it should have been. And so what happens when there's an oh shit moment is you hit an oh shit button. Right?
Gotta love that oh shit button. What's oh shit in Russian? I'm gonna Google that.
AZ5. So in the control room, there's an AZ5 scram button. And what that button does is it shoves all the control rods into your reactor, like an oh shit button should, right? Put everything in there to shut it off, right?
Gotta love Google Translate.
So,
but look at that. Fucking Russia just uses like
dude,
made up letters.
I don't know what.
Here, let's see. Voice.
Hey, take a.
Вот дерьмо.
That's oh shit.
Say, do it again.
Вот дерьмо.
Wow, that's a very attractive woman.
Can you change her voice?
Can you ever talk dirty to you?
I could try. In Russian. Enter text.
I'll save it for later.
Yes, daddy. Here we go.
Да, папочка.
Not bad.
Thanks.
Anyways.
Got me through another night.
All right. Where are we at again? Oh, yeah. So they hit the oh shit button, right? And the thing with how they set up those control rods, like we said, the last bit was graphite, right? And what happens is when you put one of those control rods in, there's like a temporary surge in power, right? Because you're putting more graphite in there.
Yeah.
You're speeding up that reaction, right? And you're also pushing away water, right? Which water kind of acts like boron a little bit. It kind of slows down the process.
It's the sponge. You said that.
It is a sponge. It's an energy sponge. It's not.
I learned that.
I'm so proud of you. So, the thing is, like, when those control rods go in, there's a temporary spike in power. And it's usually not that big a deal because you're not shoving them all in at once. And
Yeah,
also,
it's never
the
good to
reaction,
shove it all in at once.
well,
Make sure you get permission first.
depends on the situation. God damn it. So anyways, all the rods come in at once. There's a surge in power, even more, and it's amplified by the fact that the thing's already running 10 times its capacity.
10 times?
10 times, yes.
Jesus Christ.
So
That's a lot of times.
So here's what happens, right? The water in the reactor that's not circulating as fast as it should turns into steam. And this is where it gets really bad. So
Why, Jacob?
water turning to steam does two things, right? Number one, steam is very much a far weaker material at extracting energy than liquid water is. You hear about liquid cooled stuff, right? It's because liquids wick away energy and heat far better than gases do, right? So that's one thing, right? So now you have this super hot reaction that's getting even hotter.
Super hot.
And it's not even, you're not even removing the...
It's hotter than your high
You're not
school
removing
science
the
teacher.
energy. It's God damn it. You're not removing the same amount of energy you would be with liquid water to an already hot reaction that's now just building and building and building and building, right? And when steam happens, volume is a function of temperature then. So if your temperature goes higher, your volume goes higher. So now you have a means of temperature pressure buildup that could then blow the lid, the 10,000 ton lid off nuclear reactor 4, and then start dispersing huge amounts of radiation, killing people all over the place. And basically from then on, we don't view nuclear power the same way ever again, is really what happened.
Did it?
Did what?
I don't believe you.
Yeah, no.
Made up story.
Now, I mean, we'll get
news.
to it later, but like, radiation is such a thing now because of Chernobyl.
Yes.
Because it actually had killed people there.
Yeah. So, lid blows. Shit's everywhere. Soviet Union, what did they do? We should tell everybody. No, we're going to act like it didn't happen. And they did. They really tried to hide it as best as they could. It actually ended up being scientists in Stockholm, Sweden, wondering why there was so much radiation there.
Yeah, I think 2 days later, right?
Yeah, it was 2
they're
days
like, hey,
later.
something's going on over there.
And so they followed it back. Scientists used computers, 1986 computers, somehow trace this radiation back all the way to Chernobyl. And they're like, hey guys, like, are you guys okay?
It's really like a toddler shitting their pants and being like, did you guys shit your pants? Nope.
And they're looking at you like,
But like, you can smell it.
yeah.
You can smell it. They could,
Your kid's making so much noise, and they just hide behind the chair, and you're like, what are you doing over there?
My son stands in the corner and he's getting to that stage now where he doesn't want to look at you when he's doing it.
Well, that's good.
And then like you look at him and he's like, no.
Guilt them. I feel like it's worse when they look at you. Because it's like, I know what you're doing, and they're
Dude,
like,
what kid is looking at you when they shit?
You never had little toddlers look at you like,
Well, like babies.
Yeah.
But like toddlers? No.
oh, dude.
They were always like super embarrassed.
Dude, my nieces have never been like, they've always been like, guess what's happening?
They're like, Uncle Nate, eye contact.
Basically. Yeah. That's why I'm terrified of what mine's going to do.
She won't do that. Maybe. I don't know.
And it's like, you know who her father is.
Yeah, I thought that too. My daughter's not like that. My daughter's very much a girly girl.
We'll see.
So far.
I say we'll see what happens.
She's only 4.
But back to the radiation. So
Oops.
initially, they only report that 2 people actually died from the explosion. Which, I mean, it was a small crew that night. It was night shift. There really wasn't, I mean, it was just a lot in that area. I mean, because there was 3 other reactors. There was 4 total. But yeah, so initially the fire department showed up within 5 minutes, which
Killed most of the people.
But I mean, great reaction time.
I think they had their own like specific fire department.
I mean, Jack Daniels does, so I'm guessing a nuclear power plant.
Is that
does.
right?
Yeah,
Jack Daniels has
their own fire department. Yeah,
I don't believe you.
I'll Google it.
No,
but
don't.
I'll show you later.
I'm just kidding. It is. You're right.
Yeah.
It was quick.
It was a good reaction time, but yes, none of them were properly equipped because none of them actually knew what was coming out of there. They just were like, "Oh my god, a fire!" No idea that it's just dumping radiation into the sky.
So it's super easy to look back and be like, how could they not
Yeah,
have lead, protective equipment?
but that's also because of that. We now know we should have all
I was
that.
going to say, the thing is, nothing like this had ever happened.
No.
Like, radiation was really only understood by, like, scientists.
Yeah.
And not the public. Now it's like, it's an invisible death rate. It's kind of overblown, honestly. Yeah. But back then, it was like, what's radiation?
Yeah.
Huh? Oh, it's glowing. Cool.
What's insane to me is just I mean, it's not crazy amounts of radiation, but just the small amount of radiation you're exposed to constantly all day long. And people are just like, meh.
Right. I mean, phones, everything.
Yeah. Microwaves.
Sun, right?
Sun.
The sun is basically a nuclear reactor in the sky.
Yeah.
Just way bigger and way far away.
That's probably good.
It is good.
We
and we have an
wouldn't-
atmosphere to...
Yeah. I probably wouldn't be here if it was closer.
Okay.
Or I'd be wearing less clothing.
Yeah. I was going to take my hoodie off.
Oh, Jesus.
So, yeah. So, the firemen really are the bulk of the deaths.
Yeah. It was 28.
Out of, 31 initial people died, I think, right?
And they all died of acute radiation poisoning.
Which is as nasty as the docuseries
Yeah.
painted it. It's basically your tissues give away. Starts with your gastrointestinal organs, and then your skin starts to just bleed, like spontaneous bleed. Yeah. Your hair falls off. Your skin just peels off of you.
It does not sound fun.
It's bad. It's really bad. I wouldn't want to go through it.
No.
But I mean, so those guys were out there putting out the fire, right? No one had thought you could even blow a nuclear reactor. Everyone thought that they were designed in a way that they couldn't, right?
Yeah.
They mentioned it multiple times, how does an RBMK reactor explode, which was the style reactor that Chernobyl used.
Do you know how they explode? Just like how it exploded.
I think we went through that in pretty good detail.
But yeah, so it took 2 days before the outside world actually knew what was going on. Well, not even necessarily knowing what's going on. They're just like, why is there all this radiation coming?
Well, why didn't they know? Right? They didn't know because they had a meeting that night.
Oh yeah,
and the leaders of the town were there, right? And they said,
and the KGB
in classic Soviet Union fashion, they were like, we need to protect the public from the public. And that meeting very much did happen. And they very much did decide coming out of that meeting to cut connections or communications to other cities.
Yeah.
They cut the phone lines and they blockaded the roads.
Yeah, they basically locked down everybody.
Yeah. Because Soviet Union is the Soviet Union, and
Yeah.
they didn't want any misinformation to get out, like the nuclear reactor had blown, even though that's actually what happened.
How dare you tell the truth?
Bunch of idiots.
Yeah. So it ended up taking well, it said here that 32 hours after they dumped the sand and boron onto the reactor. And as you learn, boron, kind of kills the chemical reaction.
Now you know.
Now you know. But it said that a helicopter actually went down.
So yeah, it hit a chain.
You probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a risky job to do for sure. They were trying
flying a helicopter over
I know.
burning nuclear reactor.
But they were trying not to get spending too much time above it because obviously radiation. But they did hit a chain and it went down. So yes, people died from that.
So you got the explosion and now you got a fucking helicopter down. But yeah, so 32 hours after they did that, 36 hours, the neighboring town Pripyat, which is actually where all the workers and everything lived, was finally evacuated. It was thousands of buses. People were still not really told anything. They were like, "Oh, there was an accident. Pack your bags. Leave your shit. Just pack a bag for the weekend." And so a lot of people thought they were actually going to be going home. And then they just never came back.
Never came back.
No, because I think essentially
they couldn't even take their dogs with them.
Yeah. So what I saw originally, it was
sad.
A 1.9 mile radius. They were like, okay, this is what we're doing. Then they ended up almost 20-mile radius. They were like, yeah, we can't do anything within this.
After a while, they realized, oh, this is actually really bad.
To the extent of how bad it actually was.
It's actually really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see what those satellite images. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Like a little tiny sun. I mean, that's basically... So when it popped, right? When it blew its lid off, it no longer had control rods in it. So basically now it's just a vat of this uranium. And that uranium's just cooking, basically. because it has nothing slowing it down. It's just going and going and going. And that baby's going. You know, it's got so much energy in it.
Yeah. And
So
so
it's
actually,
bad.
yeah.
So there was a second explosion too that happened. I think because it blew its top, some material got in there. It's kind of like, you ever watch those videos with sodium and water?
yeah.
So like I think material got into it, and there's hydrogen and gas in there too, right? And it had a second explosion that really wasn't good. That might have been like more radiation coming out than the first.
Probably.
But sorry,
No, you're fine.
Interrupted you.
No, so
So anyways,
fuck you. Now it's not fine. So that the nuclear material is just in there, that uranium and everything's just in there cooking, and they were worried that it was gonna basically just melt through the floor, and underneath it all were water tanks, and they were worried that it was gonna melt through and get into this water tank, because supposedly as soon as it would hit this water tank, like, it'd be another nuclear explosion,
right?
and like a super huge one.
Yes.
And so I watched the video of this guy actually, like, it took him and then two other guys, like, this guy knew the layout of everything, went underground and opened the valves to empty the tanks, but like listening to the dude's Geiger counter the whole time, it's like it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But he's still alive. That dude's alive.
Actually, all three of those guys
Yeah.
that went down and did that task
Yeah.
are alive and fine.
Yeah.
Which is super weird.
He's
You
just
would
like,
think-
are you a hero? He's like, no.
I think it seems like if you're wearing protective equipment and you're making a scientific like a planned move, kind of, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
But if you're like a fireman showing up to exploded nuclear core that has fragments of graphite next to you,
No.
it's not okay.
No.
Because all those guys died. Yeah. Not all of them. A large amount of them.
90% of them. 90%.
Is that
plus.
right?
Well, I mean, you said it was like 28 out of 31.
Well, 31 people died.
Oh.
In the first month or two.
Oh.
And 27 of them were firemen.
I don't know how many firemen actually showed up.
I don't know how many I know there was like 300 cases of acute radiation sickness.
Yeah, ARS also.
Yeah.
But they were right about this nuclear material basically melting through the floor. And did, but luckily there was no water underneath.
So that's what I just want to mention too, right? Them not knowing for sure if it was going to do it or not is based off of that statistical probability that nuclear physics is based on.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason, like, they probably knew it wasn't going to for sure, or like it wasn't likely to, but it's like, well, if it does, like, we're fucked.
Yes.
You know, so you have to have plans in place for all the probabilities that, I don't know how much that material's decayed or not, right? At that point.
Well, yeah, you have no idea how. Yeah, you don't know how much of that is actually still radioactive and all that. But so it actually melted through and everything, and it's actually something known as the elephant's foot.
Nate's favorite.
Yeah, which I always thought was awesome as hell, because it's just this giant black mass of corium, and corium is just fuel-containing material, so it's lava-like, but it's just everything. It's the uranium, the graphite, and everything. Then all the sand mixed with the boron melted and basically turned this glass lava flow moving down. And what I thought was, I mean, it sucks because it's super radioactive, and the people that found it were like, ooh, fuck. But
Ooh, fuck.
they actually got a good picture of it, kind of. It was an automatic camera and everything. This dude actually like went in and used that with a light and got a pretty cool picture of it. It's like melted onto a furnace.
Didn't it break a camera too?
Oh, like almost everything that it before. Yeah, just basically just the radiation was too much. Like,
wild.
People were like going to like look at it and they were just like instantly getting dizzy. And they're like, yeah, we need to get the fuck out of here.
That's what cancer feels like.
Essentially. But yeah, so it's just this giant molten mass of radioactive material, which I always found awesome.
So why do you like it so much?
I don't know, because it's weird and weird looking.
Because I saw a video of it or a picture, and I'm like, it looks like
It just
Like,
looks
it
like
looks like
black tar.
It looks like God sneezed. blew a booger down.
It's a giant black radioactive booger. But I don't know. It's just something that's always been like entertaining to me. I'd say entertaining.
The human psyche is fascinating.
Yeah, especially with me. You never know.
You never know.
But so I mean, as we said earlier, it's almost. I mean, it's been 37 years since this has happened. And so in 2021, they actually like went back in and checked it out, and they said that it's looking now more like sand, like it's not melted anymore. So it's just kind of drying up and deteriorating. Probably cooked itself, petrified itself.
Go make a sandcastle with it.
I don't know if I'd want to touch that sand.
It's probably not. I guess it's probably still bad.
Yeah, it probably still is bad.
Yeah.
So, what did they do in the aftermath? Like, how did they decide to contain this issue?
So the Soviet Union?
Yes.
Well, so first they were in denial. Like any toddler shitting their pants. No! Did you shit your pants? No!
I know. Imagine if this happened like nowadays. Like,
So the scientist, or the engineer, I should say, Dyatlov, that was the chief engineer in the room at the time, was in denial, and he did think that he blew a hydrogen tank and that they needed to pump water into the core, which is actually making it worse, because they're just basically dumping water into broken pipes. So at first they thought that it was that, and they sent the firemen out, and that was all wrong. That was like completely the wrong move, right?
yeah. So initially they did not think that it was the actual core blowing up.
Right. And then so what they did was they said, well, fine, if you think it's a core that blew up, right? Because they had people now coming from that area saying, hey, there's a huge explosion, something's wrong in the nuclear reactor core room, right? And they did say to some of the engineers in the room, all right, go up on the roof and look at it. Which,
No.
bad idea.
Yeah.
So there was guys that went up to go look at it, right? And then there was I forget his name, the guy that held the door open, and the two guys went in there to go look off the roof to look at it. Those guys both died from ARS. Huh?
Standing directly above radiation?
So they stood up on the roof and looked down and basically saw the sun. And
Well, that's not good.
I mean, I know I would die if I'd see it, but like, I wonder what it would look like.
I don't know.
It'd probably be kind of cool.
It probably would be kind of cool.
It'd probably be one of those like, this is killing me right now, but wow, you know?
I don't know if I'd be that calm.
Yeah. So even that guy that held the door open got pretty fucked up from ARS. He didn't die, but he got really
Yeah.
close.
Well, just the amount of radiation pouring out of this thing.
Yeah. So eventually the firemen put out what they could, but the other thing too to mention is if you have a nuclear core that's exposed and just has uranium just going to town on itself in there, like if you try to spray water on it, it's not doing anything at all. It's just vaporizing the water as soon as it gets close. So like water's not enough to do anything.
Well, that was also a big issue is all the steam they were generating, like basically radioactive steam.
Right, you're just more dispersing it more
Yeah,
than anything.
because actually what ended up happening is when we're first blowing it towards Stockholm and Europe and all that, because Europe did get pretty fucked from it. But then the wind changed and started blowing it towards Moscow. I think Moscow is like 400 miles away from Chernobyl. That sounds about right. But
Sure. I believe you.
they were actually worried about all the radioactivity in these clouds, and so they actually started seeding the clouds, basically shredding dry ice into these clouds to get them, because eventually the CO2 will like chill the clouds enough to create condensation to generate them to rain.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning too today.
Yeah.
For the second time, we should mention this. We actually did this episode a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But turns out if you don't change the setting on the laptop, it records through the laptop mic and not all the expensive equipment that we have.
Yeah, so it sounded great.
No, it sounded like this.
And I'm Jacob. Today we're going to talk about the Chernobyl disaster.
Yeah, it sounded like
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. It was awful. And
So, you know what? I was going to say, my viewers only get the best. That's right. You guys are select quality people, and you deserve the best. So here we are,
re-recording.
re-recording. So it's not, if it sounds like we've done this before, we've done this
Yeah.
before.
Sorry, guys.
Anyways,
Excuse you.
so after 32 hours, right, that's when they started doing sand and boron. So it took that long for them to come up with a plan of let's
How
fix
to
this
fight
problem.
it.
Because the fire from the reactor is just going. Like, there's nothing stopping it. You
Yeah.
know? So,
It's just the sun coming from... Everyone's just seeing this glow, and they're like, what's going on over there?
yeah. So, the other, I'll mention, too, right? The whole bridge thing where people were standing outside in the docuseries, those people died. It didn't happen. People were not standing outside.
What?
People did not die on that bridge. Like, that is a Hollywood manufacturing. Sorry, guys. Sorry to disappoint. You look mad.
It's okay.
You gonna cry?
Maybe.
You gonna cry?
So,
Little baby back bitch.
there's no secret government lab, underneath with zombies like in the movie Chernobyl Diaries?
I haven't watched that,
Oh.
so...
That's basically how it ends. It's stupid.
Yeah, I don't watch those scary movies like that.
Yeah, you little bitch.
I'm a little bitch.
Me too, it's okay.
So they did have to pump liquid nitrogen under it. So you want to talk about the miners?
No, you can.
So the miners were asked to come and...
The old miners.
So it's another one of those situations where
They still didn't know what they were fighting.
they still didn't know exactly the level of radiation, like the energy that was still in that material. So what they realized is that if it broke through the concrete barrier on the bottom, then it would go and poison
The water table.
yeah, the water table that's underneath,
Yeah.
and it would like spread around, go to places that it should not go to, and have a huge impact on a much larger area than it would have.
Yeah.
So what they needed to do was go down there and dig a hole. They dug a tunnel through, and they would pump liquid nitrogen through there to cool off that concrete.
That's just so much fucking liquid nitrogen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they had pipes and stuff. It
Yeah.
wasn't like...
But also, whenever I read about these miners, like, I just picture, like, like, the prospecting guys running out in, like, Levi overalls, like, whoa. I think it'd be
Mario?
hilarious. No, not Mario. But, like, the Gold Rush guys, the old crazy guy with the beard wearing his overalls and a flannel.
Yeah.
That's what I just picture, trying to save the world from a nuclear disaster.
That's the thing is, like, it's easy to like, joke about it, but, like, the people of, I guess, at the time, Soviet Union, right? Some resilient damn people.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys that were part of the Suicide Squad, that were the 3 guys that went and turned the pumps on, right?
Yeah.
Those guys, you had to know going in and doing it, like, I'm not going to live long after this. They did, but, like, that's not the expectation, right?
Yeah.
But the people of Russia, like, they're just a resilient group. Like, I guess it's Ukraine now. Right?
Yeah.
They're very resilient people, and they're very duty-driven people. Like, they should be honored for that, even though their country didn't do it.
No. But, I mean, it's just that Eastern European, like, I mean, just imagine how psycho Russia is. Like, everyone there, just in my eyes, is just, like, full-blown, like, badass.
I'll wrestle bear.
Yeah.
I'll wrestle bear.
Ivan the Terrible, isn't that his name? I think it's Ivan the Terrible.
Yeah.
Dude from Slaughtered to Prevail.
I don't
Wears
know.
the mask and he screams.
I don't know.
Oh, I think his name's Ivan. But
Is it
he was
scary? Because I don't watch that.
no, it's a band.
Oh.
Dude screams like the devil. But they're Russian, but they moved to Florida. But dude like wrestles a bear and he's just like, "Oh, this is my friend," and he's just like wrestling with a bear. I'm like, what the fuck?
Didn't Khabib actually wrestle bears?
I think so.
Yeah.
Can we briefly?
I feel bad for the bear.
Can we briefly bring up Putin's shirtless pictures on the horse? I forgot about those, and
Dude,
this just triggered my mind because I'm like, God damn
this
it.
is not the episode for that, man.
It's so great.
If you put it in the Facebook post, I'm gonna be mad. It's not the right context. It's just like Chernobyl.
Chernobyl disaster, just a reactor breaks, and then there's just
Putin with his shirt off on a horse. Oh god.
It could happen. That's how they stopped the fire. Putin just took his shirt off and he's like, I got this.
Yeah, what a different world Russia is.
Russia is just a weird place. Like, they're supposed to be like this superpower, which, I mean, militarily they are. But like in our previous episode, the Y2K episode, we talk about why Y2K didn't really affect them because their computers were just too fucking old. Like, basically, they're just like, we're just going to turn it all back to, like, it's 1976. And they're like, okay.
They don't win on, like, high tech.
No. Like, in just seeing all the stupid shit that's happened in Russia over the years, you think they'd be a third world country.
Yeah. I mean, I think it might get there, unfortunately.
Maybe.
We'll see.
But, I mean, also the division of the Soviet Union was probably in benefit to them.
Yeah, so I mean, just in general, the duty-driven people, I think about, like, the firemen, right? Number one.
Not even hesitating to going to an exposed reactor.
Even the engineers going up on the roof to look at a nuclear reactor that had blown, right? And then you have the people that went down under there and turned the pumps on in highly radiated water. And then you have the miners that were, I mean, it was like 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
They did not take their clothes off, okay? I'll say that too.
Is that well documented?
Yes.
They just had a bunch of swinging dicks underground.
I know you're disappointed, but they all had their pants on.
We didn't have shirtless miners.
Yeah. No, they had their clothes on, but it was miserable conditions.
Yeah. Well, also, still no protective equipment.
Right. Yeah, they kind of... I think they did have equipment on.
OSHA does not exist in Russia.
Yeah. Well... It's just a shame, you know, such like resilient, tough, strong people, and
they're resilient.
Yeah, you don't think they're resilient?
No, I think they are.
I think they're
no, actually being able to.
Their government systems suck, and they let them down.
Yes, and that's, I mean, it's not necessarily the main reason, but it is one of the reasons why the Soviet Union fell.
So yeah,
the wide distrust in the government.
Well, I mean, nepotism was everywhere too. Everything was bribe driven. So actually, you know, let's go through this, right? Guess what the most sought after position in Russia was? Or Soviet Union, sorry.
Like in their government?
In their culture. What did people want to do as a job?
Taxi driver.
No.
Oh.
So even like engineer, like you think now is like a high paying job?
Yes.
Not really what it is a good job, right? You had to give bribes to get that job. Wasn't even politicians, right? Like you could be a politician, you basically had to be born into it there. There was no way you could bribe into it. It's too hard. The most sought after job was a restaurant hostess.
It's kind of weird.
Super weird. You know why?
Why?
Because the only way you get into a restaurant is by giving the hostess a bribe.
Oh.
That was a moneymaker. You had to pay a lot of money to be a restaurant hostess. Because it wasn't like you think communism too, right? You can't just go get whatever you want everywhere.
I guess.
You got to pay.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how that system worked. People would take advantage of that position pretty heavily, right? It's just it's a microcosm for the system that the Soviet Union had.
Yeah.
With bribes, nepotism, secrets, right? Distrust. It's just a mess. And then you get something like, then you get Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Right? Everything has to go wrong for something as big as Chernobyl to go wrong.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just Dyatlov fucking up in the control room, right? It was a design flaw. It was a safety test that was being pushed by the administration when the operators know it's not safe. But
yeah.
It's something that the administration gets mad about, and they put the chief engineer on the spot saying, you need to have this done by tomorrow, or you're fired, right? Stuff like that. It's just, that's really, I mean, there's even more than that, right? But that's what happens, man. That's a big fuck up.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean, nuclear reactor wise, yeah. I mean, like we had the 3 Mile Island here in the United States, and then we had the Fukushima there in Japan. And I mean,
fraction of the radiation.
Well, yeah. I mean, people still you can go to 3 Mile Island. Like people freaking tube down the river because it's on one. I forgot what river it is, but they literally tube right next to 3 Mile Island. You know, drinking beers.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Chernobyl, those incidents wouldn't have been as big.
Yes.
Because now radiation is an invisible death ray.
Yeah.
And it's frankly overblown. Right? I mean, what happened in Chernobyl was really bad.
Yeah.
That was blatant, like, disregard for safety. Right?
Like I said, OSHA does not live in Russia.
Like, now... Like, it's it's one of those things, the less control you have, the more fear there is. Like, with radiation, you see it as an invisible death ray that's being shot at me. I can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like you go into McDonald's, and, like, you get... I mean, like, processed food causes cancer much more than, like, minute amounts of radiation.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, like... I don't know. I think it's overblown, radiation, myself.
Watch it. That's how you go, man.
Yeah. If I get thyroid cancer, then
acute radiation.
I'll change my tune. But essentially, National Geographic estimates that the damages were over $235 billion, which makes it probably, I believe, the most expensive mistake in history.
Is it?
Name me one.
I don't know.
I looked it up today. I couldn't find one.
Really?
Yeah. Every
I think
list,
Chernobyl is like the number one.
every list I looked at had Chernobyl at the top.
Most expensive.
Because you had to vacate, like, 2 cities, right? I mean, you had to repurpose all those people. You had to build that sarcophagus.
Oh, yeah, we did not even bring that up.
You killed a bunch of people.
Yeah, so the way they tried to contain everything is they built this huge concrete sarcophagus around it.
Yeah.
And I mean, people that were building it, I mean, they've had to reinforce it over the years and everything. And one thing I saw is that their plan was to have it cleaned up by like 2065 or something like that.
Yeah, I think Sarah talked about it. She actually got pretty close to it, too. So we'll post a picture on it on Facebook. So
10 most expensive mistakes in history.
you can look through the list right now. So,
Number 1, Chernobyl.
So the leader of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev, wrote that...
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall.
Yeah, okay.
Reagan smash.
So later in his life, he wrote that the Chernobyl disaster, even more than my launch of Perestroika, was perhaps the real cause of the collapse of the Soviet Union, which I absolutely believe. What an example of systemic failure, this was.
Yes. There's blatant disregard of the government. Don't trust the government, kids. All right, so that's the Chernobyl disaster. And if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you like, follow, subscribe. I mean, if you guys could, please leave ratings, reviews on any of the podcast services you guys use. It helps us out immensely. Helps drive us up the charts.
Yep.
Keeps us relevant.
Next week, we're going to talk about the Battle of Karen Sabis, which is a little bit of a smaller mistake, but it's definitely funnier, I think.
Yes, still people died, but...
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's okay.
There's a certain time.
Yeah, Austria basically attacked itself on accident. We'll go through
so
it.
Stupid.
It's going to be a fun episode.
It's going to be a very fun episode.
So with that, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Yep, bye.